This is Nattering with E with your host, Eric Friedlander.
Welcome to Visionaries Global Media, your number one source for podcasting entertainment. Visionaries Global Media, envisioning excellence on a global scale.
Welcome back to another episode of Nattering with E. It's your pal, Eric, here with one of my favorite people from the podcast world, and just we realized that we'd actually been drinking buddies like 15 years ago. um, uh, I'm with Matt Cauz from Mako and Cauz, also on TSN, and Matt Talks Wine and stuff. So Matt, what is going on, man?
It's for a Wednesday in late July. There was a lot going on in the world of sports. The Canadian women soccer team with the drone scandal where, some video coach or whatever, or the guy who was piloting the drone got arrested, pleaded guilty, taking a suspended 8-month prison sentence. So he's not going to jail. But you had that. The flag bearers, Stan Bowman got hired. A crazy Maple Leafs Tavares tax story in the Athletic for a slow Wednesday. Actually, a lot in sports. But thanks for having me on, Eric. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been wanting to, like, ever since I started this pod. I wanted to get you and Bob on at the same time, and our common friend Joe Shaw
Yep.
was also gonna come on, but yeah, just trying to figure that part out. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. I totally appreciate it. So for those that don't know, when Matt and I both use Audacity to edit our podcasts, and to say that it's both good but also a nightmare, we put it mildly. If you agree to the updates, it really screws up your editing process, I find, and if you don't do it, it makes your process go really slow. So anyways, last year we connected, and it's a bit of a funny story that I'll share here. Because you and Bob have been Joe and I's like heroes basically of this podcast stuff and radio for the last like 15 years. When you added me to speak to me, I was like, did somebody, I think I actually said to you, did someone hack your account? Are you sure? Are you sure that you're like here talking to me? And then Joe messaged me and was like, yeah, I was speaking to Matt privately, and I told him that you know how to do audio editing, so he's connecting with you. And I was like, oh, so it's legitimate. It's like, so that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And by the way, I appreciate the kind words and how supportive you've been to me and Bob. Like, it means a lot. Like, we love it. And we know we're not for everyone because we're a little unconventional when it comes to sports media. And as for the Audacity thing, like, it just thought, like, I got a new computer and it wouldn't work. And it was so bad. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I was going down a road because I'm not smart when it comes to technology. I was wondering, will I ever be doing these podcasts again? Because I had a system set up that was dummy proof because it allowed a dummy like me to record it, edit, and release them out to the world. And the worst part is, Eric, I spent a whole night talking to Audacity customer service and Acer computer customers. Like, I was for hours and hours and hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to bed that night realizing I'm going to have to find a whole new platform. And then the next morning, everything worked.
Yeah.
And that's the good news. But the unsatisfying thing is, no one could tell me why. There wasn't, oh, you did X, Y, and Z. Hooray, it's working again. And to this day, I still don't know why it's working. So every day I live in fear it's going to crash. It's going to crash again.
Yep, I know what you mean for sure. Years ago, I was in radio school. I actually got into radio school partially because of you and Bob, and then also because of, do you remember Edge host Dave Bookman?
Yeah. I know
Uh,
Dave Buckman. Yeah.
yeah, Bookie, I think his nickname was. So three of you, I was like, those guys are awesome. I want to do that thing too. So I was in radio school, but I couldn't afford like fancy editing stuff, so like Adobe Audition, and someone found a pirated version of it. And so I'm on this Mac using a pirated version, and Mac, if they don't if it's not Apple, it's not going to work for very long, basically.
Yeah.
And so final project, I had this like perfect show, whole thing crashes. And I was like, no. No. So when you say Audacity is a pain, I was like, oh, damn pirated stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, it's when everything crashes, that's just a terrifying because it's about the waste of time. It's like all of that goes right down the drain. It's a horrible feeling. It's like when you forget to hit Control S and you lose all your work.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we could literally spend our whole podcast here today just going over horror stories of
Yeah.
that. But so one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast was to talk about Jaws, the 1975 film. And we were going to do Jaws 2 as well. You did Jaws 2. I couldn't find a stream for it. So before we go to Jaws, we're going to do something a little different. And we're going to do Matt's going to tell us about Jaws 2 and everything that he found, and then we're going to go to Jaws 1. So, Matt?
Okay. I'm gonna keep this quick, but yes, I did spend $3.99 on YouTube to finding Jaws 2 took a lot of work. I can watch if the Ryan Reynolds movie for free on like on Disney or whatever, but I couldn't find Jaws 2. Jaws 2 is actually not a bad sequel. The problem is because you compare it to Jaws 1, one of the most perfect movies of all time, it feels, it's not really a great film. But I would recommend it to people. It's better than you think. There's a cool scene where Roy Scheider is putting cyanide on the bullets. Jaws, his face gets burned in one scene. So the new shark is kind of badass with all these like burn scars all over it. There is high end screaming throughout. I don't know who the actors were that they picked, but their movie screens were incredible. The movie reminds you if you're going to go water skiing, you always need two people in the boat, one person driving. You need a spotter. If they'd had a spotter, it would have saved lives, but that's a subject for another day. And maybe my favorite thing about Jaws 2, and this is why everyone needs to go out and vote responsibly. The horribly corrupt and bad mayor in Jaws 1, I know we'll get to him. He's there in Jaws 2. He survived an election. I don't know how that guy survived an election, but there he was in Jaws 2 in his horrible suits. So Jaws 2, I'm going to say kind of underrated.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I'll pay the 3.99 and watch that too, so we can compare notes. But yeah, that mayor was just he emphasized everything that you see in movies where their underlying theme is that like corruption is more or money is more important than the people. Like
Yeah.
the opening scene in Jaws 1, the girl goes skinny dipping and then she gets eaten by the original shark. And Roy Scheider, who plays the main character in the movie, he's like, "Yeah, we got shut down the beach." And the mayor's like, "No, I don't think you understand. It's July 4th and we're not I don't know, girl dying or money. Now we choose money." So and
And
then
that theme, by the way, comes up in the second one. There is a scene where Roy Scheider is trying to convince all the local businesses, hey, listen, we got to shut the beaches down again. Like, really? This guy again? So it does happen in part two.
yeah, yeah. My least favorite part of Jaws 1 was they're having that town council meeting. I think shortly after yeah. So Matt is making the noise. I mean, sorry, Matt is showing us even though this is an audio only podcast, just picture someone scratching their nails on a pot on a blackboard. And that's the guy that's like, hey,
Quint.
yeah,
That's Quint, played by
yeah,
the great Robert Shaw.
yeah.
Back at a time when you're in your mid 40s, you look 60. The 70s, it was hard living for everyone. Yeah, when Quint to get everyone's attention at the town hall just gets his fingers on the chalkboard and does the slow. Yes, and like even thinking about that scene, it makes your teeth hurt.
Yeah, you're just like, oh my God. And then he's like, hey, for 10, I'm not doing this for 3,000 because the wasn't it Alex's mom put up like a $3,000
There was it was the original. I think it was the mom. I don't know if it was the town council that agreed to it, but yeah, I think he said 10,000 for that. You get the head, the tail, and he's got a great line about what you're going to get if if you pay me this money.
Yeah, and they're just like, nah, we won't do that. July 4th is coming up and nothing will happen. And then the shark like comes and kills a boater and kills Alex and Pippet as well. Nobody talks about Pippet, I find. Like if you look at these reviews.
You know what's funny? If you did that movie now, that's the one part you'd have to edit out
Mhm.
because, the love we have for dogs in 2024 is much greater than what it was in 1975.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. All the John Wick movies were done because they killed his dog, and everyone was like, "Wow, Keanu Reeves is sure shooting a lot of people in the head." And then it's like, well, they did kill his dog. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Go kill
Yeah.
as many humans as you want. So
Yeah.
yeah, they would have to change that now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Roy Scheider, I found an interesting fact. Roy Scheider was also Frank Castle Sr. in the 2004 Punisher movie.
Was he really? I never saw. I didn't know that. I remember him from like a bunch of stuff. I know. I think of the French Connection, but I
Mhm.
don't think I didn't realize he was in that. That must have been one of his last roles.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. It was have you seen the movie, The Punisher?
No, no.
Fantastic. Highly recommend it. I actually did a podcast back in November with a friend about like reviewing that movie. And essentially essentially Roy Scheider is like the patriarch of his of the Punisher's family, and the the bad guys come and they like butcher the entire family. And so Frank Castle Jr., aka the Punisher, goes out and he like goes John Wick on them basically for actually killing his family. Not no
Yeah,
in yeah, which
more
makes sense, right?
legitimate
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah,
Yeah, for mass murder.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Did you know also that Jaws author Peter Benchley was one of the reporters in the film?
Yep, he was the TV reporter, and they did it from like they must have had like a jib shot, and yes, him on the beach giving the report was yeah, that was the original author. And in the book, I believe there's like a bunch of stuff about how the Richard Dreyfuss character and Roy Scheider's wife were having an affair. Like there was
Oh,
all these other things in the book, and I'm like, thank God that wasn't in the movie. That would have just gotten in the way of it all.
yeah. I think that kind of makes sense too, because there's that one scene where Richard Dreyfuss is over at their house having dinner, and Roy Scheider's like zoned out, and the wife is really, really intrigued, and you're like, there might be something there if they like present day they would have an affair, you know?
I love I love that dinner scene when Roy Scheider's drunk and he's just sitting there. And of course, this is a scene I love because it involves wine. But Richard Dreyfuss comes in and brings a bottle of white and a bottle of red, and and then Roy Scheider, just opens the wine and he pours his glass of wine, which is just like a juice cup, right to the brim, and then he starts pouring for Richard Dreyfuss, and Richard Dreyfuss puts two fingers out after the glass has been filled halfway. Like, no, 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 that's enough for me. Like, I love that contrast between Roy Scheider's like, I'm just here to get drunk. Richard Dreyfuss is trying to be a polite dinner guest. It's a small, subtle little moment, throwaway moment in that movie. But what I like about it is just they provided humor. Like even though this is a dark movie, horror movie, whatever you want to call it, they're still with moments of comedy throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. So watching it back in the 80s, I guess, because we talked before that you're born actually the same year as the movie came out.
That's right.
So watching it as a kid in the 80s and then watching it present day, um, were you afraid back in the 80s watching it, or were you like whatever?
Well, I'm part of that generation that was terrified of going in the water afterwards. Now, I
Mhm.
always went in the water, but what Jaws did was it took your logic and it threw it out. Because I'll be swimming in a lake, a freshwater lake where
Mhm.
sharks can't live. And at some point, when I was young, I'd be swimming. I'd think about the shark. I would think about Jaws, and it would enter my head. So logic had no part. And so as a kid, I watched it with terror, but I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And then as I got older and appreciated film and all that kind of jazz, I couldn't take my eyes off of it because I'm like, this is a perfect movie. And almost every scene, you can find things to admire about it. So my relationship with the movie changed, but my enthusiasm for it never did.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I guess my other question would be, so you and Bob both absolutely love the movie. If you, I highly recommend listening to Mako and Cauz podcast. it's not a it's my only beef with Back on Causpod is it's not out as frequently as I would love it to be. But
Yes, that is true.
but
I
um
appreciate that criticism.
there's like over you guys are over 200 episodes, no? Of
Oh yeah, we are well over 200 episodes. I've been doing it since like 2016 or 7. I have to go back. I have to go back and look about when we started it. But yeah, well over 200 episodes.
and before that you guys had the radio show together too, where you were the
Yep.
morning show. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And before that, we worked together on Off the Record for 5 6 years, from like 2000 until around like 2005 or so, where Bob went off to do other things.
See, so you guys went like one of two ways. You could either be like completely sick of each other working so much together, or you could be like, no, we'll be good buddies. We'll do it that way. So,
Yeah, well, we get very similar backgrounds. We both love sports, but we both come from arts backgrounds as well. Like I
mhm.
was a guy in theater in university, going to rehearsal, but I was wearing a Phil Simms New York Giants jersey. So we'd be talking about Shakespeare, but I'd have the 1986 Super Bowl MVP jersey on. So yeah, I lived two different worlds, and so did Bob.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great. So another interesting fact I found from Jaws was that the actor who played Alex, the kid, actually opened up a seafood restaurant and named a sandwich called the Alex Kinter sandwich. And
Really?
yeah, and apparently what happened was is that the mom came into the restaurant and was like she made a complaint. She's like, I was that kid's mom on TV. Can I speak to the man? I mean, in the movie, so can I speak to the manager? Because that's really insensitive. And the kid who played Alex came out and was like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you since we did the movie." And then like they smoothed things over.
Wow. I gotta say though, why would she be offended? It's, I mean, the movie was ages ago, and it's a,
Mhm.
fish place and a sandwich. Like my first thought is like that feels like a lot of wasted emotional calories
Mhm.
to be upset and want to speak to the manager. But that still is a cool story, and that they reunited. I'm glad they smoothed it out. By the way, she did a great job. The slap
Yeah,
on Roy Scheider,
yeah,
that's a great movie slap.
yeah, absolutely. Where she's like, Sheriff, yes, whoosh. And it's like, oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I always thought it was interesting too how Roy Scheider's character couldn't swim and hated the water, but he
Yep.
was the sheriff of the town and he's the guy who has to go out and like uh that one scene where Quint, Richard Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider are all drinking and then Bruce attacks. I was like he doesn't have his life jacket on. How's he gonna survive this? And yeah.
It's such a good little backstory about how uncomfortable he is in the water. And they don't make it a big deal. It's mostly manifested through people making little jokes
Mm.
about the sheriff, and he doesn't like the water. Like there isn't a scene where he's all emotional telling you about as a child he nearly drowned. Like you find out about that in a very sort of natural, subtle way. And the scene you're talking about when they're all comparing wounds and stuff. That's maybe the most impressive scene, the USS Indianapolis scene, where Robert Shaw, where Quint tells the story about he was on the aircraft carrier that sunk, and how him and all the buddies were all floating in the ocean waiting to get rescued, and were getting picked off by sharks because the mission was so secretive and top secret that it took days before anyone realized they were missing. The great thing about that scene is it doesn't push the story. It's not there to move the plot along. It's just there for character development, and it's so well done. There's so many best scenes in that movie, but that might be the best scene.
I think yeah, absolutely. The okay, so during that dinner party, where they're comparing the scars, and
Yeah,
Roy Scheider says to Quint, "How'd you get that one on your arm?" He's like, "Oh, I just got a tattoo removed." I laughed so hard, like way harder than I should have for that scene. Like um, Richard Dreyfuss is like, this is a cut from here, this is a cut from there, this is a
yeah.
bruise here. And it's like, what about that one on your arm, Quint? And he's just like, no, that's a tattoo removal, man. It's totally fine.
And the Richard Dreyfuss points to his heart and says the name of a girl. She broke my heart. So yeah, there was some good comedy in that part.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you and Bob were creating Back What Caused Pod, was making movie references like a big part of what you guys wanted to do, or just naturally came up in conversation?
It just it just naturally it's just natural. You know, it was so it's part of our speech pattern, our language since we knew each other. I think, you know, because Bob's only a couple years older than I. Actually, I think he's like 6 years older than I. Let's be honest here. He's an old man. And you know, we grew up where you didn't have that many channels on TV,
Mhm.
and there's no internet, and video games are fairly rudimentary. Going to the movies was like the big thing. And like, you know, you went to the movies all the time. So we have a much deeper relationship with films. They were more important to entertain us, to get us out of the home. And they were a big event. So I think that's why, because we both grew up very similar with that. And again, the arts background, you know, movies, they stick with you, you remember them, but they were just such a part of our childhood that it was inevitable that there was always going to be just tons and tons of movie references, no matter what we're talking about.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that you bought Jaws 2 on YouTube, but do you still go to the theater and watch films or?
As much as I can. As much as I can. I was there last Saturday as a professional uncle. I can still go to matinees by myself. And I went to see the Furiosa, the latest Mad Max movie. And I went to an 11:30 in the morning showing by myself. And my girlfriend and I, we go all the time. You know, now we sneak wine in, and it's easy to sneak wine in because security is a 15-year-old getting paid minimum wage who doesn't care.
Yeah.
So you know, we used to do that. But no, I try to go to the movies all the time. I still watch the Oscars from start to finish. So yeah, movies still just a big part of my life now, as you know, when I was a teenager.
Now, besides wine, are you still a snacks guy? Or are you one of these people who like just goes to the film, just watches?
Oh, popcorn.
Yeah.
So you got to get popcorn. It's you know, and you have to put away your rage when you realize they're charging you like 9.50 for a small popcorn, and you just have to just grin and bear it and go, okay, bleep it, fine. I know what it is, but I need to have it as part of the experience. So no, popcorn's still critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I have friends who've done for TIFF, they try to see as many movies as possible. And they say after like the fourth or fifth movie, they just stop getting snacks and just keep going. And I'm just like, I don't know if I could do that. Like I'd still have to get snacks all the time.
It feels weird not having popcorn when you go into the movies, but I do get it. At some point, there's a law of diminishing returns. At a certain point, it's like, okay, I can't handle the popcorn anymore. I don't know. Maybe you get Smarties or something.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. So my last thing on Jaws, and then we'll move on, is
Sure.
apparently when Spielberg was talking to composer John Williams, and John Williams showed him that iconic Jaws theme that everybody knows, Spielberg apparently thought it was a joke.
Really?
Yeah,
Jesus, that's it. It goes to show you that geniuses get things wrong,
yeah.
and that works of genius, perfection, there is always going to be luck involved. That nothing is ever 100% planned. You know, one reason why the movie's great is you never see the shark. You know,
Mhm.
it's the slow build, it's build the tension. Don't show everything right away. And one of the reasons for that was because they couldn't show you the shark because it kept sinking and it was too expensive. It's like, screw it, we'll wait and show the shark later. And you know, that's one of the reasons why that movie's brilliant. And John Williams' score, that movie doesn't work. Like I always say, that and Halloween are maybe the two movies that rely on score more than any other film.
Yeah, absolutely. And possibly Godzilla, like that Godzilla theme
Mm-hmm.
from
Yep.
99. That's what I would think of. Yeah. So moving on, I found a couple of interesting things about you, Matt, on the Google machine.
Mm.
For instance, when Googling Matt Cauz, the first picture was actually of Dan O'Toole, not of Matt Cauz.
Poor Dan O'Toole. I feel bad for Dan. He doesn't deserve that. That man looks great. He deserves better than that.
I was like, this isn't the Mac that I remember from like
No.
the Sports Center Cafe. And then born in 1975, you're born the same year as Jaws came out. So some could say no cause, no Jaws.
I wish I could take credit for it. I wish I could take credit for that rhyme.
Yeah, if you want to cut it there, I'm totally fine. And then so you have Matt Talks Wine and stuff and Mako and Cauz. So Mako and Cauz is actually my favorite podcast. Like we mentioned before that our friend Joe and I love Mako and Cauz. Like no matter when you guys put it out, we message each other right away. Like two
Oh, that's
fangirl
nice, man.
yeah, two fangirls at a Justin like who just talked to Zach Efron. We're just like, oh my god, there's a new Mako Cauz pod, and it's always good. It's always great stuff. Actually,
I appreciate. We, by the way, we will be starting up again in the fall. Right now, like Bob is, he has, he has a daughter, and his schedule is all over the place. And I've said this to him, so I'm not, sometimes it's like herding cats with Bob. It's always been like that, but right now we're just trying to figure out a time to get together for lunch. But we will be getting it going in September. So I can't wait. And we always prefer doing it in person than over Zoom. Yeah,
mm,
everything's better in person. But Zoom is so convenient.
yeah, Joe moved to Indiana, but he comes into town sometimes. So I want to try and eventually get it so that like the four of us can somehow do a pod together. So I'll have
That'd
to
be
figure
awesome.
yeah, I'll
Yeah, I'd be
have to
down.
figure it out. So with Matt Talks Wine and stuff, was this I guess my two questions are, was the podcast a way for you to basically study at the same time as I guess show people that you were interested in wine, or was that like two different things?
There's two different things because by the time that pod had started, I already got my diploma,
Mhm.
like my wine sommelier diploma, and flown to London, England for the graduation, all that. It really started. I always love doing podcasts. I like interviewing people. I like learning. I like doing research, and just I love hearing people's stories and their journey and all that jazz. And that started at a time where there was like both podcasts got started because there was low moments in work. Like Macro and Cause started because Bell did cuts across Canada, and so then my radio show got canceled. So then I had time on my hands.
Mhm.
And then a couple of years later, when the Matt Talks Wine and Stuff podcast came out, it was another period where there wasn't a lot of work. So it's like, okay, I have more time on my hands. What do I want to do? I'm like, okay, let's start the wine podcast. And I knew enough people in the business to start doing some interviews, and then it just grew and grew and grew. So it's really just more of my just basic curious nature about things.
Nice. So, two questions for you there. When you watch Jaws, if you're a new person watching Jaws, what wine do you recommend? And
Mm.
someone who's watched it like 8,000 times, such as yourself, what's like your wine that makes you feel safe, I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh, okay. Let's start with a wine that makes you feel safe. Chardonnay. Chardonnay always makes me feel safe because it can grow anywhere. You can do it in high altitude. You could do it near the bottom. You can do it in warm weather, cold weather. It's a resilient grape. It handles oak. It can be stainless steel in terms of, and I won't get too nerdy. That's as nerdy as I'm going to get in terms of wine stuff. But it can, and it goes with a lot of food, and it can be made anywhere in the world. Now, if you're going to, let's see, if you're going to pair it for people for the first time, you're going to want a simple good wine, because you don't want a wine you have to really think about because you're watching the movie. So your focus should be on the movie. So I'm going to go with from France. I'm going to go with Beaujolais, which is a region in France. The grape is Gamay. It's simple, red fruit, a little bit of spice. It brings joy, but it's not a wine you need to really brood over and to think about am I getting a light mushroom note on the finish or any of that BS. So Beaujolais for your first time, and Chardonnay is the wine I drink to make when I need to feel safe.
Nice. What wine do you suspect they were drinking on the boat?
It's a great question because I'm always wondering that. Actually, I believe what they were drinking is some sort of apple brandy. And the reason is, when you've seen the movie as much as I have, at one point, Quint is talking about what he's going to need on the boat and about the supplies. And I believe he mentioned something about apple brandy. So I don't think there was any wine. I'm fairly sure it was a spirit. Because also wine, if it's white, you got to keep it cold. You need space. You also don't want wine to shake around a lot. You want it to be still, and that's not going to happen on a boat. So I think it was like an apple brandy.
Nice, nice. That's great. So you also watch the CFL, and
Yep.
my question is, do you have a favorite team, or are you like because you
Argonauts.
write for? Oh, it is Argos. Okay.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I've mentioned columns, and that's because when I got into football in 90, I got to football in 1991. That's when the team got bought by Wayne Gretzky and John Candy and Bruce McNall.
Mhm.
So John Candy was a hero of mine in 1991. I'm 16, so I'm getting John Candy movies, SCTV. Now he's owning a football team. I already liked football, but now I just got more into the CFL. They won the Grey Cup that first year. They got Rocket Ishmael, who I'd seen play at Notre Dame. And the crazy thing that people don't realize, Rocket Ishmael was going to be the number one draft pick, and the Dallas Cowboys had the number one pick. And he ends up going to the Argonauts because they paid him a lot of money. Could you imagine in 2024 a CFL team taking away the number one overall NFL pick, who is incredibly popular in college, was going to go to the most popular team, the Dallas Cowboys, and then ends up playing at Skydome for Matt Dunnigan, Pinball Clemens, and the Argonauts? It was a cool story. So that's how I got into the CFL.
That's awesome. Actually, I used to like the Argos too. I say used to because Damon Allen was my guy forever.
Yep.
And when he left, I switched to the Ticats. And then like McManus had left, so I felt fine like switching over because that would have been sacrilege before if you had like been a Damon Allen guy and gone to McManus. Anyway, so in 2012, I kid you not, I'm at this bar on University. I think it's called the Overdrow, something along those lines. It's across the street from Union Station,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
so Damon Allen is there at the bar at the same time, and I go up to him. I'm sober. I am not drunk at all. I just go up to him. I'm like, Damon Allen, you were my favorite player, but when you left, I switched to the Ticats, and he looked at me like I had insulted his daughter or something. And I was like, come on, man. It's like I forget who the quarterback for I think it was 2012. I can't remember who the quarterback for Hamilton was, but it was Michael Bishop and some guy named Jackson for the Argos.
Jarius Jackson.
Yeah, Jarius Jackson. So I said to him
Yeah.
like Jarius Jackson or the guy in Hamilton. And I think Hamilton was actually reasonable at that time, and he was like, I hate Hamilton, but I could kind of see your point. He's not as good as I am. And I was like, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, so it was pretty funny when he looked at me like please stop talking to me and go away. So
Oh, that's awkward.
yeah, it was pretty funny. Actually, another funny story from that specific day. I was on my phone walking out, and this guy was also on his phone walking out, and we smacked like right into each other. And so had did the Canadian like apology standoff thing of like, oh,
Of course.
I'm sorry too. I leave and I hop on Twitter, and PK Subban tweets out, I just bumped into this big white guy at the Overdrow. And I was like, oh my God, I just smacked
That's
in
me.
PK Subban. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. But I I uh I said to I think I said to someone afterwards, I tried to pick up a girl. I was like, he's not that tough. I stayed on my feet. So-
Did it work?
no, 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 unfortunately not. But before we get out of here, is there anything you'd like to plug and where people can find
Oh,
you? Or
I mean, really, if people want to learn about wine in a non-pretentious way, the Matt Talks Wine and Stuff with Interesting People podcast. I got like over 170 episodes of that. There's, a lot of really cool, fun stories. Macco and Cauz will be coming back in September. And if anyone hasn't seen it, you got to watch Jaws. It's a perfect movie. It's literally a perfect movie, and it's so rewatchable. You throw that on, everyone's going to watch it. And you know how hard it is to find a movie that everyone agrees to?
Mhm.
Everyone will agree to Jaws.
Absolutely. Actually, that reminds me of one more fact I forgot to mention was when Jaws came out, 67 million people went to go see that movie, and it's considered like the first like big summer movie of all time.
Yeah, it was the first big summer blockbuster. It
Yeah.
started to change the paradigm where studio houses started thinking about waiting and releasing the big movie in June and July, and then eventually the first summer movie becomes like May. They keep pushing it back and back, but it all started with Jaws.
Yeah. Any interest in seeing Deadpool versus Wolverine or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard the reviews are good. I trust those people. The second movie was still good. I mean, it wasn't as good as the first one, but it was a good movie. Hugh Jackman's a great actor. So yes, I of course I'm a nerd. I'm absolutely going to see it. There's no way I'm going to miss it.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, same.
Yeah.
I plan to. Well, Matt, this has been a pleasure. Please come back anytime.
Yeah,
Open
fun to
invite.
do.
Yep. All
Hey,
right.
thanks so much, Eric, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say because that's a different podcast, but always always a pleasure. And this will probably go out Friday, I want to say. So we're recording on a Wednesday, but this will be out on Friday. And then after that, our next podcast is going to be with Peapod from Ruthless Pro Wrestling to talk about August 24th Ruthless Pro Deathmatch Tournament, the King of the Kill, and possibly Lex Luger, because Lex Luger is the greatest wrestler of all time, and that's just how I feel. All right, see ya.
Take care.